For those of you who don't know, AAF Orlando is part of the American Advertising Federation's National Club. It was established way back in 1905, so well over 100-year-old organization with a deep history. We are the unifying voice for advertising, more than 200 local clubs, nearly 40,000 advertising professionals, though I personally believe there's more than that, just based on the way the membership is organized. So more than that. So, you should feel good about being involved in such a historic and prestigious organization. And our mission is to protect and promote the industry. So we have, of course, a grassroots network of all the partners that we have, as well as advertising firms, creative shops, digital shops, all the local clubs, and college chapters too. Go ahead, Arthur. Thanks. So AAF Orlando is a member of the AAF's 4th District, which the 4th District is the entire state of Florida and the Caribbean. So it's a very strong club. So again, we should be proud to be part of that, and again, work hard together to make it even stronger. We have 2 organizations, as you probably know. We have AAF Orlando and Add2 Orlando. So Add2 Orlando is the chapter for young advertising professionals. And it's the great quote, if you're in business, then you're in advertising. So, as you all know, we work with a big variety of businesses. We have our influence across the entire economy. Go ahead, Arthur. The AAF Orlando executive team for this year, I'd like to just quickly introduce. It's myself, Terry Mooney. I'm a partner at Evoke Advertising. I'm the president for this year. We have Chris Baer, who's the owner of Torrygate Marketing, coming in as president-elect. Jamie Holder is the immediate past president. We have Tina Fleming from Designzilla's coming in as a secretary, Nick Olko as a treasurer, and we have Francita Williams taking the role as Add2 president this year. Today's guest speaker, I'm very happy to present Alicia Williams. She's the D&I partner for AdventHealth. She's going to share her knowledge and her experience with us, and she's going to make it very easy for us to come away with some very practical steps and tactical steps that we can do to make sure that we all have a strong DEI approach in our firms. And again, Arthur Goodman, the AAF Orlando DEI team lead, has put all this together today. Again, Arthur has a big passion for this initiative, and he's done a great job of putting this together and getting Alicia to be our guest presenter. So thanks again to everybody, and I'm just gonna go ahead now and turn it over to Arthur.
Thank you, Terry. So again, yeah, thank you everyone for jumping in. Very excited to have you all here. I'll give you a brief overview of what the DEI team is. Ultimately, our goal is to further diversity, equity, inclusion throughout the Orlando area, not only through the marketing and advertising community, but all of our clients and corporate entities as well. We want to make sure that we are providing resources and information to help further the efforts of this really important initiative. We have people, the goal is to have someone represented in every marketing and advertising agency and creative agency here in Orlando, of course, as that's what AAF's focus is, but we also have representation with larger corporations outside of our industry. So such as AdventHealth, we have, of course, Alicia here with us. We have members from OUC, Finastra, and we even had someone from NASA who's very passionate about this. So it's pretty cool to have all that team involvement from there. Really quick, some of the resources that we're putting together. We have a direct email for AAF, which is diversity at. Feel free to reach out to me from there, and we can get you in contact with anyone throughout our team. We also do have a Slack team, as Terry mentioned, and you get access to that when you join the DEI team. Joining our team is free. It's really just about involvement. There's no other commitments other than being informed, sharing information, and reaching out when you need some support within your DEI efforts within your own organization. And then upcoming, we have some other events that have been planned out. Of course, things got a bit shaken up because of COVID, but we do have a series called At the Table that we're hoping to launch in October. whether that is in person at an event, or if it is another webinar such as this, where we're going to feature some individuals sharing insights and stories and data around these DEI efforts from there. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Alicia. She's been great. We've been working together for the last couple of months. I'm really excited for all the information she's going to share. And let me give you some control over my screen. One moment here.
Okay.
All right, and you should be good.
Cool. All right, hi everyone. Like I said, my name is Alicia Williams. I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Partner at AdventHealth. I'm excited to be here today and talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion and give a quick overview. All right, so what is DEI? So diversity, most of us are familiar with. We know that's going to be what makes us different, right? Also with diversity, it's visible characteristics. So your race, your gender, your age, but also with diversity, it's things that we can't see. So what's your religion, your sexual orientation? Are you a parent? Are you a veteran? Those are other things that add to our diversity when we're looking at diversity within the workspace. And then equity. Equity is going to be the opportunity that you're giving team members to guarantee fair treatment to them. Does everyone have access to growth and promotion within your organization? What does that look like? Other steps companies can make with equity, making sure that men and women are getting paid the same for the same type of role. And then, of course, the inclusion piece. So that's going to be the most important factor. You can have all the diversity that you want, but if you don't have the inclusion piece, it's all for naught. It's just for show. So you have to make people feel a part of the company culture, make them feel like they have a voice there. And so that's going to be the action piece that you need for all of this to work. And so one of my favorite quotes is, diversity is being invited to the dance and inclusion is being invited to the party and inclusion being asked to dance. And so it's a great quote that shows how this works. And so once again, you can have all the diversity, you can invite people to join your organization, to be a part of your team, but unless they are given opportunities to feel successful there and grow there, it's all for naught. So making sure that we're practicing that inclusion piece there. And so what are some benefits of DEI efforts? So there are tons of studies, there's tons of research about how it stimulates your business growth and it increases your competitive advantage. 66% of teams that are diverse, they outperform teams that are not diverse. And so it creates that competitive advantage when you have different people working for you that can tackle a problem with different perspectives and provide solutions. And so it's a great point to note. It improves your cultural experience there. What does the company culture at your team look like right now? Is it inclusive? And making sure that you are being intentional about building that inclusive culture there. And then developing an authentic reputation. This is important from that perspective. People know about your company before they get there, right? If somebody's interviewing, they've looked at everyone's LinkedIn to see who works there. They've looked at your company website to see what the makeup of the teams look like there. So making sure that you're coming across authentically. I know in this space, companies are, there's more of a platform right now to make sure that you're doing these efforts with the social injustices that are going on, but making sure in the future that this is something that becomes a part of your company culture. And then also this reduces your talent churn. When people have an opportunity to grow, when diverse individuals have an opportunity to be successful in their craft and their field, they're going to stay. This also reduces your HR costs. It's expensive to hire employees. It's expensive to do that type of research. So there's a company benefit when you're reducing that talent churn there. And so what can you do? So we know that there's an issue. So what can your company do right now? So first, we're going to start off with educating our teams. It's going to start with leadership. Just like with anything, it starts from the top and works its way down, but everybody has a role in this. So let's educate our teams. You're going to set goals and measure often. One of my favorite quotes is, what doesn't get measured, it doesn't get done. And so we're going to make sure that this is a part of our business strategy, just like you would measure what your marketing efforts are doing, what your ad efforts are doing, what your finance goals are. Diversity and inclusion has to be looked at in the same light. And then you're going to focus on those marginalized team members. So do you have pathways for them to be successful there? Are you developing your high potential diverse employees? Making sure that you're being intentional about that. And then acknowledgement and accountability. This is what a lot of companies struggle with, but trust me, if you only have 2 Black people working there, they have already discussed it. So let's acknowledge it. Let's talk about the obvious. Let's put it out there and talk to your team about how you're going to be held accountable. What are you going to do? The fluffy words and the messages, that sounds great, but what numbers are you holding yourself accountable to? And what actions are you taking in order to make a change in this space and within the company culture? Some other things you can do: hosting internal team learning opportunities. Webinars like this are great. Inviting speakers to come and talk to your teams. TED Talks are great. Those are free. You can just go to YouTube. You can have a team lunch and everybody discuss it. I think these are great ways to get the conversations going about things that people are talking about maybe with their friends, and not inside their work culture. So making sure that you're providing these opportunities for your teams to engage in these topics. And so another thing too, community outreach and public service. This is important because it's how are you showing up in the communities that you serve? Does everyone have access to you, or is it just a few people? What does that look like? So I think it's great to partner with different nonprofits. Are you partnering with Jones High School? Are you partnering with Evans High School? Do these people know that you exist here? When I was at Converse, there's one of the designers there, amazing work, grew up in Boston, didn't know that's where Converse was located. This year in February, he was a part of a huge sneaker launch about NBA players that diversified the NBA. And so, you know, you're losing out on talent when people are not aware that you're in their backyard. They can stay here, they can grow here in Orlando. So making sure that you're building those connections, and once again, being intentional about building those connections with the communities that you serve. The next generation, we know millennials, we know Generation Z, they're looking at companies to see how diverse they are, what's your stance on certain topics. And so making sure that you are being intentional about reaching out to those diverse communities. And when I say diverse, I'm also talking about, we're obviously talking about minorities in this space, Black people in this space, but women, your veterans, the LGBTQ community, and people who have disabilities. How are you reaching out to those communities? And so one of the things that you can do is develop your DEI team. I was informed recently that a lot of ad agencies do not have HR teams, but you're in luck that diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is a part of everybody's role within the company. Even if you had an HR team that had 50 people, that means your company is going to be probably 3, 4, 5 times that size. And that means that there's no way those HR professionals can reach everybody in the organization. So DEI efforts are a part of, it's everyone's goal. And so you're going to approach this with authenticity. So taking time to consider why you're doing this. Do you feel pressure to do it because of what everybody's talking about on the news? So making sure there's authenticity there, and you're doing it for the right reasons, because then you'll show up well in that space. You're going to designate a point person. I'm sure there's probably somebody within your organization that is interested in doing this work. This is also an opportunity to elevate somebody and give them tasks so they can feel a part of that company culture and creating a new company culture for yourself. And so, and then also provide support and training. So making sure that they have access to different diversity, equity, and inclusion events that go on throughout the year. Different speakers coming in, making sure that they have access to continue to support this work. And then offer opportunities to affect change. So once again, how are you showing up in the communities? What can you do to reach out and influence change within your communities, within your teams, and provide those opportunities for everyone there? And so with some of the unconscious bias trainings that I do, this is one of the quotes that I leave with, and it's, you're not responsible for your first thought, but for your second thought and first action. And so I think it's a great quote. We can't change things that have happened in the past, but now with this new information that we're getting, how are we changing those second thoughts, and how are we being intentional with those first actions to make change and create change at our companies, in our communities, and, you know, just being cognizant about what we're doing with our DEI efforts. And so I think Arthur has.
That was great. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So now we want to really open the floor up to all the attendees to answer some questions. So let me stop sharing this screen really quick and bring that over. One moment here. So if you can ask any questions in the chat, we want to go back through and address those right now, but definitely thank you very much for all your attendees so far. Love to be able to hear some questions right now from anyone. I don't think I've seen any in the chat. But let me address
If you
those
do
now.
want to ask a question, just go ahead and unmute your line, please.
Sure. You can also open the floor up to any initiatives that you're pushing within your organization. We want to hear about some of those ideas, make sure that we're aware for the other organizations involved as to what you're planning on doing within your company or why you're attending some of these events right now. But Alicia, one of the first questions that we have come through is what are some good online resources to research? Maybe there's some examples in different areas of DEI as well.
Good online resources. I would say, honestly, I just read a ton of stuff. There's a lot of access to things on Instagram. I think for companies, honestly, Pull Up for Change is a good one. It's a young woman who started an organization and asking companies to be accountable for these messages that they put out and what your numbers look like within your leadership teams at your organization. So I think maybe I would say go through Instagram and see what's out there. I don't, NPR, of course, is a good one. Any sort of TED Talks, all of those things can be great online resources. But I usually start with Instagram and see what's there and then kind of click through and go through their websites from that way.
Yeah, some other resources, we actually put together a spreadsheet and we'll be sharing that out through the DEI team shortly. And so there's a list of organizations, both locally, regionally, and nationally. And they'll be covering different things, both within the advertising industry and without. I would say specifically for this audience, AdColor is a great opportunity to check out. That is AD as in advertising and then color. They're a really big organization that's representing just what's happening with the diversity movement within advertising. Another good option to look at would be Color of Change. They're going to be a nonprofit organization that's also advocating for these D&I initiatives and wanting to push those two together. So we'll be sharing that out to all the attendees as soon as that list is ready. And again, there's a lot of just local resources, whether that's clubs of the NAACP or any other action in organizations like that are in a local area, as well as national organizations that you can follow.
There are a few more questions.
Yeah.
It says, we have to represent a diverse customer base, how to measure DEI externally. I'm not 100% clear. Like, do you mean like the customers that you're serving? How do you measure that population? If you can clarify that. Lisa.
Hi, Alicia. This is Lisa.
Hi.
So our customer base is very diverse, but we only have a limited amount of money to do what we have to do and represent all those customers. So in terms of leadership and getting them to understand how important DEI is in the community, what is a good measurement? Is there a KPI? Is it we should spend X amount of spend in this area? Like what can I show leadership at the top that this is a good example and why we should do it? And I know you talked about employee churn and authenticity, but what other ways can we say this is going to help our brand in XYZ way? Do you have any insights?
Yes, I mean, I definitely think I'm all for measuring. I think like I said, it has to be considered a business strategy as well. I think you have to show the need for it from like a data perspective. So what does your customer base look like? You want to show up authentically in this space. So if you're trying to market to a certain demographic, do you have people within your organization that can speak to that authentically? And then if not, I understand that budgets are a concern. What groups can you reach out to leverage that insight? So are you reaching out to AAF and asking like, how can they help you with these opportunities that you have there? So I think I would start along that case. And then also it's the right thing to do, right? So I think just plain and simple, this is what we should be doing. And so we have to create inclusive environments in order to be productive, because there's going to come a time where these questions and situations are going to come up again. So, be proactive in this space. I think now we have a great platform to speak to leadership about that. So I hope that
Lisa,
that
jump in really quick. what is the initiative you're trying to achieve? So like, what department is this for? What goal is this to try to convince leadership to put more effort towards this?
It's really around community engagement. We do have a significant amount of it, but I want to, move in the direction of supporting racial and social injustice, right? And so how do we align our strategy with that? Internally, we're doing a great job. We're working on that. That's HR's main focus. But externally, how do I make sure that we're representing that in our variety of sponsorships that we're doing and our community engagement? Making sure we're aligning with groups that are central to providing the solution and not just political policy so much, but being grassroots, right? Helping those that need it the most, and really trying to do a reform around it. So we can't necessarily get into the politics. That's not what our business is about, but aligning that. And I've read so much, I do so much research, but I would love to hear what others are doing and how can we do that? Just any suggestions or what's the best approach? And leadership gets it. They know we got to do it and it's got to be good, but how do we make sure that we're not just funding programs and stroking checks, but we're actually seeing a difference being made?
Yeah. Well, just for the sake of giving other opportunities to the other questions that are here, but I'd love for you to send an email to diversity@aaf-orlando.org and I can follow up with you from there. I think the big thing would be about if you can get the data points around the external customer base that you're trying to connect with, and then we can take a look at, or you and your team can take a look at what is that communication that's going outwardly. So if it is, let's say it's a Latinx community, but everything is in English and there's no type of information that's in Spanish, right? Or any type of other Latin language.
Gotcha.
It's not connecting with them. You're really creating marketing and advertising and communication material that is not actually directed to that organization. So steps like that, where you can understand your audience, how much money and attention is going towards that, to that community, and then really trying to measure from there, as Alicia was saying, around the efforts that go in. So yeah, I'd love to be able to chat offline about that, but that's a great question. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Next, Kate was asking about AdventHealth supplier diversity initiatives and goals, especially there's opportunities for certified diversity marketing suppliers. Interested in attendees.
That's actually something that we're definitely working on. Their diversity and inclusion team had been around for about 10 years and then it was dismantled and now it's started back up. So myself and another guy have been there since December. So we have a lot of things on our plate. Supplier diversity is definitely one of those. So as of right now, it's not something that I could speak to or share, but it's definitely top of mind for our diversity and inclusion team there.
That's good. Next, the question was how to give hiring managers who want to hire more diverse candidates. Any tips around that? I think that's a great question, especially for the ad agencies.
Right. I think if you're my favorite word in this space is being intentional. Where are you sourcing your candidates from? That would be my first question, and making sure that you're getting. Before you make a decision, your candidate pool should be diverse. And so are you receiving applications from FAMU, from BCU, from UCF, like all of these organizations? I went to UF, so they have a Black student union. Post your job advertisement there. They have La Casita there. So it's like, if you're going to post these jobs that you have, make sure that you're doing them in diverse spaces so diverse people will see them. And that way they apply. And so you have a diverse candidate pool. So it's just about being intentional about where you're posting that information so the right person, the right group can see it.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing too. Like I know there's been a lot of research around having resumes that don't have any type of information. Typically they're called blind resumes, although there's a movement around removing that because it's a bit of a disableist or ableist language. But looking at your application process, seeing if you're already creating some bias off of the application process with having too much personal information involved instead of just information related to the skill set. That's a great way to open the door up for people to feel more comfortable to apply for a job, as well as, again, like reaching out to different resources that are in the area. I know for Orlando, there's a big problem with having people move out of the city and trying to keep talent inside. And one of those ways that we can do that is trying to cultivate our local talent, starting at the high school level. So partnering with the high schools could be a great option first and foremost, and all the different high schools to provide those opportunities for whether it's internships or just informing them about jobs that are opening up and having people apply from that. and helping to coach them through those stages. So yeah, I think that's a great question right there. Mark also wanted wanted some examples of some things that agencies and businesses should measure.
I think it's great when somebody is looking at your website to figure out if they want to work there or not. I think it's great to showcase the diversity that you have. Once again, going back to those 5 marginalized groups within the workforce. So I would highlight how many women are in leadership positions there, how many minorities are in leadership positions, and possibly if there are enough people, break it down by race, people who have disabilities. And once again, just not physical disabilities, maybe it's a learning disability. Let's talk about that because they definitely get left out of these conversations often. Veterans, that's a huge one. We have, millions of veterans here in Florida alone. So how are we leveraging their skill sets? They served our country. How are we leveraging them there? And also the LGBTQ community. So making sure that we can, talk about these things. So when somebody is looking at your company's website, they already feel included, like, oh, well, this is a diverse group. I'm sure I'm going to be welcomed here. And that's what people are looking for when they look in those spaces.
Yeah, I think intentionality is just the big thing, right? Just really recognizing and starting internally, right? Looking at your team, seeing what's actually present, and then being intentional about making those changes. For instance, if you're an agency or an organization that does serve a specific community, but you don't have anyone on your team that's a part of that community, that's an area of opportunity for growth, right? You can really bring in someone who understands that space, as opposed to just continuing to work without having representation within your own organization. A question here is about AIGA, Orlando having a strong mentorship program. Terry, this might be a better question for you to answer. About AAF Orlando offering mentorship opportunities. I don't know, Terry, if you could hear me for that, but ultimately people are asking about mentorship opportunities through AAF Orlando. I think
yes, thank you for, I was going to jump in on that one anyway. So thanks, Arthur, and thanks. Hi, Sandy. So yes, AAF Orlando does have a mentorship program, and we work to really get that moving every year, and we're going to put a promotional push out there for it. We want to have mentors and mentees sign up. We have had it going for a couple of years now. So again, we are an association, and we rely on your participation. So if you're interested in being a mentor, or if anyone's on here who thinks they might want to be a mentee, go to our website, aaf-orlando.org, and look for the mentor sign up, and we're glad to get you paired up. So yeah, we want to make that program as strong as we possibly can.
Yeah. I know regarding that Tina,
sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I know that Tina Fleming, who's now the secretary for AAF Orlando this year, she did a lot of work last year identifying some mentors, and that was a program that was available. But I know there wasn't necessarily a lot of marketing around that. But that was initiated last year with a good group of people as well, but I know that she's looking for more attendees.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that you asked about the mosaic, and even at Evoke, we have a pretty strong internship program, and I've seen several of our interns move on to the 4A's MAPE, which is a very similar program, and that's just an awesome experience for them. So yeah, the more we can point students and in those directions, I think it's all going to be great for them as they move forward too. And we make that part of our program. Our internship program is awareness of MAPE and Mosaic.
Yeah, and Mosaic Council is definitely a focus of the DEI team with AAF Orlando. So we're looking to incorporate a lot of those elements into the organization also moving forward. Dana Heron from Red Fork was asking, in such a politically driven time, what are some recommendations for sparking healthy conversations around DEI, both in agencies and various organizations?
Well, we've been doing this a lot. We've been giving leaders tips on how to have these conversations with their teams. Obviously, I would say start with, if you don't already have this rapport with your team, it's definitely going to come across as not being authentic right now, but better late than never. So making sure that you have this rapport with your team. And also what I do when I have conversations like this, so what I've been doing is mirroring what a conversation like this would look like with from leaders to their teams. So what you're going to do is I start with rules of engagement. And so I basically have 8 rules. It's essentially the same thing, but worded differently. So, because we have different types of learners. And so what you're going to do, it's essentially respecting people's viewpoints, assuming they have, the best intentions. Because one of the things that's difficult when it comes to these race conversations, people are afraid to say the wrong thing. And so they clam up and they're not talking about it. When if you assume that people are coming to this conversation to learn and they have good intentions, then you can overlook if they say something incorrectly. And that's what the point is. We're trying to drive the point home that we're all more alike than we are different. And people just want to be treated fairly. When they come to work, we spend a lot of time at work. Let's make it a happy space and let's feel included. And that's what it's about. So I always say we start off with rules of engagement on how we discuss these topics, because you have to come back to work the next day. And so with that, if something does get out of hand, if a conversation does take a left, let's refer back to the rules that we started with and then go from there. And then if you need to take a break, if you need to call in somebody else or reschedule the conversation for another time, then definitely do that for the integrity of the team.
Yeah, another thing too is opening that up to your team to see about how they want to address these topics and how they want to incorporate these discussions. Mm-hmm. Every team is different in both size and make. So each team is going to communicate differently and feel comfortable in a different manner. So perhaps you start up an anonymous kind of form or questionnaire, and you find out, like, would it be best to do this over a lunch, like a paid team lunch, and we have these conversations and we watch a TED Talk, as Alicia was saying, and we discuss that. Is that something that would be a good experience for your team? Would it be better to have a discussion in the morning meetings? Would it be better to have an out of office event? Well, not that we can go out of office right now, but finding out how your team wants to have these discussions and bring it into the work culture and ultimately improve the work that your team is outputting is going to be a good first step as well, just to make sure that your team is feeling comfortable about their process. It's never going to be a comfortable thing, as Alicia was saying, but I think people are wanting to have these discussions and make sure that they feel safe going through these discussions where they are spending a significant amount of their time each week. So moving on to the next question, Daniel Paccioni was asking, what are some organizations in Orlando doing this really well? Organizations leading the way, setting good examples? Great question. Again, I have that resource document with a spreadsheet, so I'll be able to send that out to all those that are interested. Feel free to, again, to email me at diversity@aaf-orlando.org, and I'll get that out to you. In regards to the organizations leading the way in the advertising industry, I think we're trying to be the ones leading the way for that. We really want to get every agency involved. So if you're not involved with the team yet, please join, fill out either the form on the website or send an email, and then we can get you involved for that on the creative side. But there's a lot of other organizations like the Chamber of Commerce across all these different diversity groups that are really active within their communities, but not something necessarily that we've seen within the creative space, which is what is the void we want to fill with this team. All right, this is a question for you, Alicia. Thank you for your time, shared knowledge. Let's see. What advice, examples can you give to agency leaders, business owners providing opportunities for growth and leadership?
I would say with this, you're going to, once again, identify those high potential diverse team members that you have, and then ask what they need from you, and then also maybe provide feedback as to what's going to get them to the next level. One of my best friends, actually, she works for a large hair care company, and with all of the social injustice going on and awareness being created, they realized their e-board is not, diverse at all. So her CEO has sat down with her. They're doing a 6-month plan to get her ready for that next step. And so that, like, once again, it goes back to being intentional. How are you developing those skill sets for those team members that you see they have it there? They just need a little tweaking. So what can you provide them so they can get to that next level and be successful and continue to help lead your organization in the right direction? So I think to summarize it, it would just be providing them feedback and just creating an opportunity. Maybe there's a special project that they can work on, and give them an opportunity to shine, and so you can see their talent there.
Yeah. Another question, I'll try to go through these a little bit more, and any questions that we don't get to answer during this meeting, we'll definitely try to address after the fact via email. one question is about like business limitations from Jillian. When you have overall limitations about size or resources, or whatever that may be, how do you help those team members feel heard who are looking to get suggestions? So maybe there's an opportunity for someone that wants to initiate a new change within the organization, but the business may not be able to do that. How do you still make them feel heard and valued, even though you can't necessarily follow up on that idea at that time?
I would say, well, I think I need a little bit more context, but I think if they can't, if they've come to you and they've expressed interest in this space, I would say at least one, acknowledge what they're saying, and then what's something that you can give them to make them feel heard and make them feel valued in this space. So, I mean, I would imagine there has to be some small change that can be made in order to make them feel like this topic is important and that the company values DEI. So I would just make sure they don't feel like make sure it feels like it didn't fall on deaf ears. That's definitely not what you want.
Yeah, I think the big thing is about listening and following up, just being open and transparent about the idea being great, but maybe there's a lack of team members or financial resources to actually execute that idea. And then giving them the opportunities, as Alicia keeps saying, like give them the opportunity to maybe take point on making something come to life. If it's something that's really passionate for them and they want to see a change occur, partner with them, help them, empower them to kind of take the reins on this and make that change occur. But I think people feel frustrated when they don't feel heard, not necessarily when there's not action, but when they don't feel heard, and then they're just turned a blind eye to, and it just falls off by the wayside. People feel definitely a lack of motivation to continue moving forward. So I think the first thing is to empower people by listening to them. All right. Let's see. Yeah, one more question here, I think. How would you recommend a person who is a part of a marginalized community to encourage equality and inclusion in their organization or agency, where they are not the top of the organizational structure? Great question. I think that's coming from Francita.
Right, that's definitely a good question because it's typically where most of us are in that space. I would say look for your allies. All of these groups, you cannot get anything done unless you have allies that are working alongside you. Marginalized people cannot use other marginalized people to help hear them, right? It's a falling on, everybody understands it already. So I would try to identify allies in this space, allies on your team that have the voice of leaders, that have the ear of leadership, that can create change and influence change. So that would be my suggestion, is identify who you can partner with, talk to them about what you would like to see done, and then also tie it back to the business strategy. Because once you make that business case for it, this is how we're going to increase dollars. This is how we're going to, put our name out there more and be more visible in the community. I think it's kind of hard to give pushback on that. So look for your allies and create a business case for that. In that space is what I would suggest.
Also would say to empower yourself on that. So if you are the marginalized individual within your organization and you want to see change, you're not necessarily confident that leadership will support that, will handle it themselves, or you're not confident that the organization has the time, money, or resources to make that happen, then take on that responsibility on your own, right? And try to lead that and ask, to get support from the leadership team. And I think a lot of time leaders will resonate with that. And it's an opportunity for you to kind of show what you have and to make the changes occur that you want to see within your own workspace. So yeah, definitely empowerment off of that and finding allies, great options. To wrap up, before we wrap up, I think we also wanted to hear about any initiatives that are occurring within organizations. So I know that there's a few agencies that reached out to us and organizations that said they had some ideas about what they're trying to implement. If you'd like to unmute yourself, say who you are, where you're from, and an initiative that you're trying to implement, maybe get some feedback on that or share it out with the rest of the group so that they can have some ideas to grow from there as well, that would be great. So I don't know if anyone wants to start with that.
Hey, Arthur, this is Ralphie with Spectrum Reach. So I wanted to get y'all's feedback. So here in our Florida marketing team, we're actually very proud because we have the majority of our team is minorities, and being a company that's across 41 different markets, we've seen a lot of success having a very diverse team. When other markets come and sit in our brainstorming sessions, their minds are blown. Metric-wise, we are probably one of the top 5 markets in the company who meet and exceed our metrics. That being said, just brainstorming, I'd love to almost package this up into a case study and share it to my leadership to show them, like, you have a very diverse team that represents LGBT, minorities, Black, women. This is what success looks like. How would you recommend for myself and my teammates to package this up and share it with my leadership team?
Sounds like you just did.
Oh.
Yes. I mean, I would show metrics. I mean, if there's any data comparing your market to, to other markets, showing them, like you said, you're outperforming them, showing those metrics. And also taking pulse surveys as well. I think those are underestimated. Sometimes it's more of things that aren't necessarily tangible. So taking a survey from the team, like from where it is now, what they love about it, what they're able to accomplish, talk to the team members and get feedback, and package that up and put it in a presentation. And so leadership can get a feel for the company culture that they're creating and how they're making team members feel every day when they come into work.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
The information that you shared is great. Like, if you want to take that information and put it into a PDF and send it to leadership, great. If you want to, book a meeting for 30 minutes and ask to, do a presentation and share that information, great. Yeah, it takes time, but it's obviously something that you're passionate about. It seems like the rest of your team is passionate about. So, empower yourselves, take ownership of that opportunity, and really try to get that message out there. Don't sit on it. Really try to embrace the achievements that you've had and share that with your leadership so that they're very aware of what's going on, and they can really support the initiatives moving forward. But I think it's great to hear stories like that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have any ideas of what they're trying to implement within the organizations? You can either leave it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and share that. Again, love to hear from like an advertising agency or marketing agency. I believe 321 had some ideas that I've connected with before. So,
hi, my name is Kim. I work for an agency called Mock Media. We are minority owned, and our CEO had initiated a conversation with the whole company on DEI and a Black Lives Matter movement. And I thought she started with a really basic but really good question that caused a lot of people to really think a bit deeper about diversity. And that question was, how often do you think about race? And the answers were really diverse. And I don't want to take up too much time, but the result of that conversation is that we are now creating a task force internally to help our team to build more diversity awareness within the whole company, but also we're looking at how can we help our clients do the same thing? How can we bring what we've learned internally to the many clients that we serve internationally? And how can, when we advise them on communication strategies, how can we bring that DEI element into things? So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Kim. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's definitely great when you are able to have those difficult conversations and then something is coming from it. So, your team members feel heard, they feel seen, they feel valued. I think that's really amazing to hear. And then, leveraging that to helping your clients as well and making sure that it's a focus, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, and Kim, I think you brought up a really good point, is that not only did you have the conversation internally, but now you're applying it to your clients and seeing how you can adjust your client work for them to make their work even stand out more, so to be more diverse, to be more inclusive. And that's a really important thing for agencies who manage the communication and the brand representation for these organizations, is how can we make sure that that's all being taken care of. I'm also a co-owner of a marketing agency here in downtown Orlando called Red Fork Marketing. And Dan, I don't know if you're still on, Dan's one of my business partners, but I'd love for him to share some of the conversations he had around some of the clients that have reached out that identify that even some of their visual assets, some of the photos on their website weren't as inclusive as they wanted them to be. And they wanted to make those changes in light of all the different things that are happening in the world right now. And I think that was really powerful to have clients reach out about that, and also for the team to start looking at how they're selecting images and how they're connecting with their audience from there. So Dan, I don't know if you're available still to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for calling me in. I think that ultimately the goal here, and I think for a lot of businesses, is how can we at least show support or be involved with possibly not taking a political stance, right? We don't, some businesses don't want to dive deep and look like they have an agenda behind everything. So weirdly enough, when Red Fork was kind of rebranding probably about a year and a half ago now, one of the main things we wanted to do was look at our diversity aspect of our branding. So we made sure that especially the visuals of Red Fork going forward represented a wide variety of people doing different things. And so when clients started reaching out to us, that's one of the ways we recommended for them to do the same. Incorporate imagery and graphics that's more inclusive, that's more diverse. And that in itself is just a simple way to, one, showcase your brand as caring, right? And kind of preaching for the cause. And then two, from a business perspective, as you mentioned, Alicia, diversity drives progress. And so doing so connects with more customer bases, connects with more people across the board. And for us, the other thing we did, we made sure to do within our internal team is to drive that conversation, especially on Juneteenth, where we had kind of an hour conversations around the importance of Juneteenth, what it means, kind of the history behind it, and what we will do as Red Fork moving forward to honor that day. I think that's a simple switch that any company can do without getting too political in order to showcase diversity, have conversations, and recommend that for their clients as well to be more inclusive.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned, and I think this is something that a lot of people feel is they're worried about making things political. But I think it's important to know that DEI efforts is not a political issue. It's a human rights issue. It's a humanity issue. So it's really about trying to connect and establish relationships with other humans. It's not about choosing the left or the right or red or blue. So I think you can avoid that political aspect of it and still represent that you care about people and the uniqueness of people and be inclusive of those people. So I think that's also something to take away from this within your agencies and organizations, to focus on the humanity aspect of it as opposed to just the political aspect of it. So, all right. Anything else from you, Alicia? I think we're getting close to time here.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, thank you all for spending your lunch with us today. So
Terry, we'll let you close out, Terry. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
yes.
Okay, great. So thank you. Thanks, Alicia. Really appreciate it. And judging from the questions and the chats, I think everybody was very engaged with this. So hopefully with Arthur at the helm, it's something that we can keep going throughout the year as well. We would love to have some more events, webinars, whatever, panel discussions for DEI, and make it, you know, a constant for the AAF and for everybody. So again, if you have questions and you want to shoot them to Arthur at diversity@aaf-orlando.org, or if you want to join the Slack channel, you can do that as well. Like Arthur said, there's no obligation, just jump in and let's keep the conversation and the momentum going. So thanks everybody again for attending today. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you all at our other events and your support.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Take care.